today. I'm excited about this time together, and specifically for our presenter, Sarah Andrees. Thank you for being here and for joining us. She's a graduate, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk about when she graduated, tell us what your research was and kind of some background, and then take it from there. And the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I graduated in 2019, which was super exciting. So just actually last February, I feel like, was when we actually finished and got to walk. And I walked. I recommend that if you guys get the opportunity, definitely take advantage of that. It's a great experience. So that was fun. My dissertation work was how individuals experience leadership development. It's my area of focus, and I love the dissertation work. For the research piece of it, the writing it is a little bit more difficult, but it was a good experience, so I'm really glad I did it. All right, I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you guys.
I have to brag on Sarah just a little bit. She wrote 2 books during her PhD journey and started her own consulting business, and she's just doing fantastic. So,
well, thank you. Thank you. All right. So today I want to share with you guys, I want to talk about expanding your influence, our personal branding and social media. And before we get started in that, I'm going to have John put you guys into small groups and have you discuss what do you hope to do with your PhD, or if you already have your PhD, what are you doing with it? And I'm going to give you guys about 8 minutes to have that conversation. So you'll be in groups of 3 to 4. So make sure that everybody in your group has a chance to share, and then we'll talk more about why that's so important when you come back from having your discussion.
All right.
Hey, Lisa.
Hey.
I don't have Doritos, but I have Doritos.
Oh, yes. Let me get my background. I forgot to put my background in because I was on another Zoom call just a minute ago. Now I can't find it. I know I put those in there. Oh, man.
Wait, who let Lisa in?
I can't tell, Lisa. Do you still have some purple in your hair?
Yes, let me get out. The backgrounds are not working right now because of everything. And I need to go close my office door. See my purple?
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you.
It's so fun.
Hold on 1 second.
Another Dr. Howard. Y'all are going to be overwhelmed by all the girl power on this call. Just saying. How many female doctors do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
A lot.
7. 7 of us. Woohoo! Yes, yes, yes.
And more coming.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm so excited.
It's the attention span. That's what does it.
John, is everybody back?
Yes, everybody is back in the main room.
Okay. So in our group, Heather she just finished up, so she's hoping to use her dissertation work to reach teachers who are working with Latino to English speakers and learners. And that's really cool. She knows exactly who she's trying to reach. So can one other person share with me, who are you trying to reach with your dissertation work? Dave is unmuted, so he gets to share with us.
I think that's me, David, isn't it? Sometimes there's a few of us. Okay. Well, I'm still only in 3rd semester, so I'll put that out there as a cautionary tale that I don't know exactly what I'm doing.
That's okay.
But if I had to decide right now, I would say targeting the deaf and hard of hearing and disability community and improving conflict relations and policy improvements to improve educational employment, that kind of standing and through local government.
Okay, Perfect, thank you. All right, so the reason that this is so important is you've got to know who you're going to talk to. For me, when I was working on my dissertation work, I knew that I wanted to talk to business professionals, HR maybe, who were in smaller businesses and who didn't care if I dyed my hair multiple different colors, who are okay with me wearing jeans, who are okay with me being a female in a male-dominated industry, because I was working in a Harley-Davidson dealership. So by knowing who you want to talk to, it helps you frame the messages that you're going to give. And then also understand that the people that you're talking to, you need to use a certain voice when you're speaking to them. And I just made a list here of, are you going to talk to them from the scholar viewpoint, the business person, a parent viewpoint, the pastor, the expert, friend, a stressed out PhD student? All of those different voices make a difference in how you come across to the people that you're trying to talk to. And I'm sure in your research and in your studies, you guys are going to come up against or realize the barriers we put up against ourselves in our minds that block out certain information. And so if we're blocking out that information, then other people are doing the same thing. So if we're not talking to them in a voice that they can hear, they're going to totally ignore our messages that we're trying to share with them. And we are all doing, you did PhDs or you have done, or you're doing them so that you have this message, you have something that's important that you want to share. So you have to find the voice that they can hear in order to share your message with them. Also, you need to build trust. And I think in order to build trust, especially in digital platforms, is you have to be credible and you also have to be consistent. So what that means with be credible is your appearance, the way you write and speak, your body language, and the messages that you're trying to share. And I'm often reminded, I don't know if any of you, I do a ton of reading, so I don't know if any of you have read the book autobiography about Mary Kay. She's the makeup, I don't even know what you call her, like we all know who Mary Kay is, makeup, right? So she tells this story in the book that her son was going to meet with a professor to talk about a possible research project. And the professor comes in and is all like wearing really old clothes and the lady's hair is all a mess and she doesn't have any makeup on. And she kind of shuffles when she walks and she just didn't present herself well. And Mary Kay said, well, my son just had a really short meeting with her and decided not to work with her based on her appearance. Now, part of me, the Sarah who loves to dye her hair multiple colors, thinks, well, that was kind of stupid on their part because, you know, you should listen to everybody's ideas, whether you like the way they appear or not. However, the other side of it is understanding that there's a lot of people like that. So the way we appear makes a difference in how people take us as, are we credible in what we're trying to get across to them. So keeping that in mind, that our appearance and our messaging has to match up with what we're trying to, or who we're trying to communicate with. And being consistent, whenever you decide to do some type of platform like social media, you need to be consistent. So consistent can be daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. I think in social media, if you're only talking once a year, people are going to miss you and they won't even see you at all. For me, I am consistent weekly is pretty much what I put out for some of my content, and I'll share that with you in just a minute. And then I do some things that are monthly. But the idea of being consistent is people get used to hearing from you and they start to look for your content as you're sharing information with them. So I'm going to take you guys quickly through some of the branding information and stuff that I'm doing, and then I'll pause and we'll have a conversation. So hold on one second here. All right. For some reason, when I do the big screen, I lose you guys. I wanted to make sure we were still all in the same thing and everybody. All right. So self-promotion and branding.
Sarah,
All right.
are you, I'm sorry,
What?
I didn't just share at this point. Are you trying to share a PowerPoint?
Yeah, did you guys see that? Is it gone?
It is. So we need to try to share that
Ooh.
again.
Thank you for telling me that.
You bet. We can see it now.
I'm seeing it.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to share with you guys what I'm currently doing, just so you can get kind of a snapshot. And then I want to talk about the strategy for this. So I currently have a Facebook page for my business. I have a LinkedIn page for my business, which is my personal LinkedIn, but I use it as business. I didn't start my own LinkedIn business page. I also have a website. I have a Leadership Snapshot podcast. I have a YouTube channel. I have books on Amazon. I partnered with Dr. Bradley Davison, and I think he's speaking at Friday for a free leadership resource, advice, and recommendations ebook that I use to collect email addresses for people because I'm trying to build my email audience. I also, on Google, if you just go to Google and you Google Sarah Andrees, I come up a ton. And that's on purpose. Like, I've been working at that, so I show up all the time when you're Googling my name. So basically, I have Facebook, LinkedIn, podcast, YouTube, Amazon, my website that has a blog, and I'm doing all this for messaging and credibility. I'm trying to get people used to seeing me as a leadership development expert. And it feels like a lot when you look at it that way. But when we go to the next screen, here's what it really looks like. So I do a thing called where I am reusing content. So my YouTube videos, I put the same video on Facebook and on LinkedIn. My podcast interviews, I put the same podcast, maybe with different message, on LinkedIn and on Facebook. I also put all that content on my website. So on my website, I have a blog. It's one blog, but it has a video section, a podcast section, and an actual blog section. So I'm reusing that kind of content over and over again, using my branding voice. And each of you, I would suggest, as you work through your PhD and trying to figure out what your voice is, you want to come up with something that you're consistently doing in your messaging. And for me, I have 3 filters that I use when I'm trying to figure out what my messaging is. It's curious, optimistic, and practical. And what that means for me is that I want to raise people's curiosity about whatever it is I'm talking about. I also want to be very optimistic. If you would take me probably about 10 years ago, I'm not naturally optimistic, I'm more practical. But I think that in leadership development, optimism really helps people. So I always want to believe the best. And that's the kind of way I want my message to sound when I'm talking about it, is, hey, you can do this, I believe in you, there's opportunity. And then the practical piece is giving people a step, something that they can actually put into practice today or this week. Usually when you hear me, if you watch any of my videos, I say, hey, this week I'd like you to try doing X. And that's the way the messaging goes. I also suggest a messaging schedule. And right now, what I'm doing is I'm running 7 weeks. So every 7 weeks, I'm setting up and I'm doing a schedule of what I'm going to talk about. So right now, I've actually just started another cycle. So this is my 7-week cycle. It's going to be know yourself, know your craft, understand what makes people tick, flexibility, learning to listen, asking yourself hard questions and wrestling with the answers, investing in yourself both personally and professionally. So that'll be the kind of the topics of each of the weeks, and all of those topics relate around becoming an effective leader. So it's kind of like a funnel, if you think about it that way. And the reason to do a messaging schedule is that way every week, I don't have to figure out what I'm going to talk about this week. I know what those messages are going to be. I also try to do an overall quarterly schedule where I kind of have a vague idea of that bigger topic. So like becoming an effective leader, that's one of my big topics. And then I've got like a list over here on my whiteboards of other bigger topics that I want to make sure I'm talking about. And all of that has to do, again, with that messaging idea of becoming the development specialist for leadership development. I want people to understand that I know how to help people develop as a leader. And then this is the big thing, and I think all of you who, wherever you are in your process, you can do this with the work you're currently using in your PhD stuff. And that is repurposing your content. So my videos, I do that video, and then I take the video and I use Google to Voice to have it type the words that I've spoken. So basically what I do is I set my microphone up right beside my computer. I play the video and Google puts it into words for me. It's in Google Docs. So I do that so that I don't have to retype everything that I've written. It kind of makes a transcript of it. And then I just edit it for reading purposes. And I take snippets out of it, like good quotes, like, man, I can't believe I just said that thing that was really smart. I'll take that out, that quote, and I put it into different Google or images, graphics, and put it on Facebook and LinkedIn to help promote that video. My blog content comes from video, podcast, and sometimes I actually write, but very rarely anymore do I actually write it down. It usually is transcribed from a video or a podcast. And then of course I do the same thing, the quotes and the postings from LinkedIn and from Facebook. And all of that I'm trying to do is I'm funneling them to my website. So when I share a podcast, yes, it's out there on Apple Podcasts and all those different places. But when I have a podcast going, I'm actually putting that podcast onto my website. The links that I share to let people go to see my podcast are directing them to my website to listen to the podcast. Because I want them to land on my website so they can see everything else that I offer as far as my services for my business. They can read more about me, find out that I'm a human being and a pretty normal person. And then it gives me more credibility because I'm cross-linking. And then I always batch my content. So my videos, my 7 weeks content, I record all those videos in one day, almost all the time. This is what I do. I bring out 7 shirts. I wear a tank top. I change out my shirt in between the videos. And that way it looks like it's a different day. Nobody usually pays attention to your makeup all that well. So people can't tell that I've recorded them all the same day. And it saves me from having to record it every week. So one day a month or one day every couple months, I'm recording all my videos and then I'm scheduling them. So I don't have to keep doing that. I take advantage of the scheduling in Facebook. So that way I can schedule those posts and I don't have to do them it looks like I'm doing them every week. I'm not. One day a month, I'm setting them all up and scheduling them like that. The same thing with my blogs on my website. It has scheduling capabilities. I'm scheduling that content. And so here's the thing. Right now, you might be like David said earlier, hey, I'm only in my 3rd class, right? Well, there's probably somebody who you eventually want to talk to. Like I knew that I wanted to talk and be a business consultant for leadership development. So the thing that I wish I would have done is I wish I would have started right when I was working on my PhD. I didn't do that. I put it off because the company I worked for, it was really particular about self-promotion. And so if I would have been smart about it, I would have started right when I was working on my PhD. I would have started small and it would have been consistent. And I would have either done a blog or I would have done a vlog or a video blog. And I would have done those every week, even while I was working on my PhD. It's interesting. Yes, you're going to grow and yes, you're going to change. And yes, you're going to learn some things. You're going to be like, oh, I learned something totally different than what I talked about 2 years ago. And I think that's okay. It shows your growth in that you're acknowledging that, hey, things change and I'm learning and growing. But the thing with being consistent on your blogs and stuff is that Google algorithms pick up on you always putting new content on there. And then by the time you finish, you'll have all this content that you can use to either repurpose or to say, hey, I've built up a longevity. So if you look on sometimes when you're searching, it'll say the website's been here since 2020, right? If you look at my website, it's been in process now for probably about 5 years, even before, because I knew going into working on my PhD what I wanted to do. So that's my recommendation. Right now, the things that you're writing in class, repurpose them to be the voice of who you're trying to talk to eventually. So if I would have been smart way back when, I would have done all the stuff that I was writing and reading about. I would have just rewrote it from a scholarly voice. And we know scholarly voices are more like, according to so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. Well, I would have just taken that and I would have reworked it to be business related, right? Other experts say, that kind of thing, just to help with the credibility. All right. So we're going to do another small discussion. We're going to put you guys in groups again for about 8 minutes. And this time, what I want you to talk about is, what did you learn from everything I just went through really quickly? What did you learn? And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about some other ideas. So I will let John put us in rooms again for about 8 minutes.
The gym shot. I hadn't seen that one yet.
Yep, I'm doing a new background every day.
Do you have
I'm
a
back
green
tomorrow.
screen?
Nope, it's just I lit my room so that it works without one.
Yeah, I haven't been able to figure that out yet. When I do it, my face goes in everything. I'm like, oh, forget it. You guys can just see my bookshelves instead.
Someone's gonna have to tell Chris that they postponed the rocket takeoff today.
Oh, did
So
they?
maybe he won't be joining us the rest of the day. He'll be
I'll
pretty
be devastated.
They put it off till Saturday, they said.
Yep.
My grandson or my daughter's happy that my grandson will get to watch it now, so that'll be exciting.
Nice.
Man, Zoom is so bossy. It just kicks you out of a good conversation.
I know, as long as we're having a great discussion, John. How rude.
Hey now, the
is all
facilitator
John's
asked for
fault.
8 minutes and I gave her 8 minutes. I mean,
That's perfect. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. I heard a couple of you were having great conversations. Hopefully the rest of you had great conversations as well. I think the important thing of whatever you decide to do for your social media is have a presence. If people can't find you, they're not going to be able to hear the messages that you're trying to share. If you are going to be, if you think, hey, I'm going to work in the scholarly realm, then not only are you going to need to do a social media presence, but you're also going to need to do a presence in journals and other things like that, so other scholars can hear you and talk about what you're doing as far as your research goes. If you're going to work in business, I think you have to be on LinkedIn. You need to be sharing articles and information there. Depending on where your audience is where you kind of have to show up. Now, there are some people who will say, hey, I don't need any social media because I have this great network in my community and I'm going to be able to do business and talk to everybody who's in my small community. And if that's all the people you want to reach, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to reach a bigger audience, you have to brand yourself really well and you have to be visible. And visible might be one of the most uncomfortable things that you decide to do. Because when you start putting content out there, guess what? People start giving you feedback. I got feedback on how my video camera was angled. I got feedback on my clothes. I got feedback on my language, which is all appropriate, right? So you have to learn to say thank you and then decide if you're going to listen to it or you are just being gracious and saying thank you. It's all feedback you're going to get. So what I'd like to do now is open it up for questions for the last 15 minutes, and I'll answer anything that I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll make something really amazing up.
Sarah?
Yes.
I was telling Dr. C, what if you have multiple personality disorder? And really, I'm trying to reach 3 audiences: business and my HR experience, but also scholarly, and personal coaching and spiritual direction. So all of those have the same core ideology, but they're somewhat different groups.
Mm-hmm. So I think I would recommend doing the same thing that I did with my books. And when you write a book, the best advice that anybody has ever given me is you write it for one person, whoever that one person is. And so you identify exactly who that person is. Like I knew when I was writing my last book, which is Invisible Roots, that I was writing for a business professional who was a Christian, who was a woman, who wanted to be a more effective leader. And that's who I spoke to. And the better you can know that one person, it's really interesting, because even though I wrote it for a woman, I still have men buy my book. Right? So it's about really understanding who you're trying to talk to. And what I did for a long time when I was working on that book is I had a picture of who, like that person, and I put it up on my computer because that's the person I wanted to talk to. So that was the language I used. And I'll tell you, I do have different people I talk to, because 2 of my books are for women who ride motorcycles. That has nothing to do with PhD leadership scholarly stuff or being a better leader. It's about being living a full life kind of work. So, but I can't mix those 2 audiences, and it makes a lot more work when you're trying to talk to 3 different people. So I would pick one, talk to that person all the time, and then you'll attract the other people by having a good conversation with that one audience.
Thank you. One more question or request. Some of the tech part you were going over quickly, like being able to transcribe and then graphics and things. Could you include or send us a list of resources that are inexpensive, or
Yeah, I wish I would have known about Google Docs, or not Google, yeah, Google Docs, because it has a transcribe right in there that does really well, because Google, when you're using your phone and stuff, it's always, at least Android, it always is listening. So it transcribes very rarely with any kind of mess up. So I will email that out to you guys. I don't have anything like that right now, but I'll email you something out. I'll send it to John and he'll forward it out. Right, John?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
Yep.
Hey, Sarah, how do you balance out? You talked about your recommendation of putting out consistent information, all that. How do you balance out being consistent with what you put out versus having something worthwhile and passionate to say that you can actually project your credibility through? Sometimes that's a tough balance.
I think it's a mindset. At least it is for me. When I believe that I have a lot of really amazing things to talk about, I have a lot of amazing things to talk about. But I think for me, the one thing that I do is I only talk about a couple of types of things. And I talk about them over and over and over again. I get tired of them, and you think I'm still talking about new stuff. So I talk about leadership development. I talk about becoming an effective leader, which is leadership development. I talk about personally and professionally development. So I talk about whole leader, which is personal and professional development. So basically, I think it's like having a core thing, and then all those little branches of stuff that relate to that core message. And I haven't ran out yet.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So Sarah, I'm curious about your reach and what's what are your goals and what you're trying to accomplish as far as how many people watch a typical video that you do versus how many people are engaged in your blogs and on Facebook, and where do you see people more engaged and more interested, and what does that look like?
Engagement is hard. It really is. I have a couple people who comment to me all the time. And I think that's one thing that I'm still working on. And I think unless I spend a whole bunch of money, I'm going to still kind of be smaller in the engagement piece of it. So this is advice: build an email list and mail to them consistently with content. So like once a month you're sending them something, you have control of your email list, right? I am at the mercy of every time LinkedIn or Facebook decide to change their algorithm, and I have to figure out, okay, how do I talk to the 600 people who are currently following me? And 600 feels like a really small number to me when you look at people who have like 5,000 and 1 million and that kind of stuff. But this is what I tell myself. I don't know if it's true or not, Wilbur. I say, the people who are following me are the ones who really need to hear my message. And I don't need hundreds of thousands of people. I just need a handful of people who want to engage me. And it's really interesting. I don't get a lot of business from that. But when I have word of mouth business, people see that and I get a lot of credibility. I get asked to speak at like SHRM groups. I spoke for the Small Business Administration. I did a talk for SCORE, and all of those things came from recommendations, and those people went and looked at my content and liked it and then invited me to come and speak. So I think it gives me more credibility inside my circle right now that I have versus getting online business from that. I'm not sure if it's truly the most effective thing I could do, but I don't know any other way of doing it.
Sarah, did you, because I'm a member of those organizations too, I know you can set your profile on, after you join their organizations, you can put your profile on there. Did you do that? As Dr. Reed was saying, how did you do that?
No, I did not. I just emailed out. So I just contacted the SHRM groups directly and just said, hey, I'm a speaker. This is what I speak on. I did leadership development as a strategic initiative was the topic. And I talked about why their organizations should be strategic about leadership development.
Very good.
The only other thing that I did this year was I did join the National Speakers Association, because I do want to go out and do public speaking. And that gives me more credibility when people are looking and they say, oh yeah, she is a member of, which means basically you have to make so much money as a speaker in order to join them, and you have to be able to document it, which means I've gotten paid to do some speaking. So I'm probably halfway decent at it, which gives people a little bit more focus at that. Which, by the way, if any of you want to become a public speaker, I recommend joining Toastmasters for a couple years and practicing. I did that when I started my PhD because I knew this is where I was going. I did Toastmasters for 3 years while I was working on my PhD, every Wednesday night for 2 hours.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a difference.
It does. It forces you in areas you didn't know you were going to go.
All right, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions if there's any other questions.
Sarah, you talked a little bit about search engine optimization, kind of getting on the top of those Google searches. What things have you found to be most effective to help you with that?
So the first thing that I would recommend is your blog that you're doing is for the people to read, but it's also for the Google search engines. So in my blogs, I make sure that I'm putting the keywords that I kind of want to show up for. So of course my name is all over the website, and that's pretty, normal, but I write about leadership development, developing leaders, being a leadership development expert, that kind of stuff in that blog. And when I put my videos on, I also include that in the titles. So I title my videos, like right now it's a week one of 7, becoming a leadership expert. That's the actual title of my video, because I want it to show up in the algorithms. Same thing, your images, make sure that you're putting your alt text on your images, which helps people who can't see, but it also helps Google when it's searching and climbing through your website. And then I would also recommend that you pick a platform and you stay with that platform. So if you decide to, right now I use Wix is the one I like. It's pretty easy to use, but for a long time I used GoDaddy. Well, all of a sudden when you switch from GoDaddy to Wix, Google has to research it and it doesn't do as well for a while. So pick one that you think is easy to use and then just stay with that, and then just keep building it up so you have all that content in one spot.
And Wix does have different, I just joined that one, and they do have different levels, I think, of optimization built into the particular package that you purchase.
Yeah, it's super nice because they even have this like back end thing. I don't know what level it is that you have to be at, but it has a back end thing where it prompts you and it says, hey, your page doesn't have page title and your page doesn't have a description. You need to do all that because that's what helps the search spiders find your information.
Is that Wix?
Yeah.
Yes.
They also have a free version. But if you're going to do a website, don't go for the free version. Get your own URL and own your URL. So that way, like mine is sarahandries.com and also wisewoodllc.com. It's me, and then it's my business name. And I own both of those URLs. It's worth the investment to own your own URL. So unless your name is really hard to spell, I would have it be your name if you're trying to promote yourself. But if it's really hard to spell, like you got a Z in there and it sounds like an S or something like that, then you might want to do something more creative for your URL to make it easier for people to find you. Last question.
Well, I have one, if no one else has one, because I've been greedy. So Dr. Beard scarred me a long time ago. On my first PhD retreat, he talked about imposter syndrome. And so as a new PhD coming out there, when you go onto Facebook, do you sort of separate from the friend list you already have to like a new list? Because people are like, well, you're just Sheila, you know?
Yeah. So I think imposter syndrome is very prevalent no matter what you do. And so I think my advice for everyone is own it, right? So when I introduce myself on my videos, I introduce myself as Dr. Sarah Andries. And that's the way I introduce myself every single time, because I earned my PhD. It was not given to me, right? And so since I earned it, and I really did earn it, I want people to recognize. And I know, and I read all this kind of stuff because I'm kind of conscientious about some things. So I read all this stuff where PhDs shouldn't put doctor in front of their name. And some people have the opinion, well, if you earn a PhD, then you should put it in front of your name. And I just decided I was going to. And I went with it. And I'm going to keep doing it because I've decided. And I think it's a mental thing for each of us, right? We have to, I know getting a PhD, you change through that process, but the reality is that you have to take ownership of it and you have to decide what's right for you, right? And if your friends and family come along, awesome. If they don't, awesome. It doesn't matter. It's what's inside you, what you've decided to do with what you've earned. And I think that's probably the best advice that I could give everyone is look at your stories that you're telling yourself. And the reality is, somebody has a great quote, and I wish I could remember off the top of my head who it was, but basically what it says is, we go through our lives thinking that everybody else is thinking about us, and watching out for us. And the reality is they're all worried about their own lives and not paying a bit of attention. So do what's right, you know, what you've earned, and own it. And the people that it matters to will be drawn to it. And the people that it doesn't, they'll go away. You know, not everybody's going to love you, right? I'm not a good fit for everybody, and that's okay. I only want to attract the people who are good fits and who will like me for who I am, and that I'm quirky and I changed my hair color. So like, this is reddish right now. Next time I go in, I'm getting purple. And that's the kind of people I want to attract, right? So just own it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, John, we're 1 minute over.
Well, I feel personally attacked both by Sheila saying that I scarred her and by Sarah, who said that she earned her PhD considering I was on her committee. So,
hey, you know what? I'm grateful for that, though, right? I think it was you, Dr. Beard, who said, you know, you want to make sure that you work hard for it, and you want everybody else to work just as hard for it, right? Because then it means something.
yeah, when you're going through the process, you want it to be as easy as possible on you, but when you're done, you want it to be as hard as possible for everybody else. That's kind of how it works. So,
Just
but
like
Sarah
doctors and
earn it.
residents.
Did a great job. She really did. Had a great dissertation, and thank you so much, Sarah. You have just it's been a wonderful presentation and very informative, and we really appreciate you being a part of this and being a part of our community.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
We will see everybody tomorrow, and thanks for coming in today, and we'll see you in the morning and go from there.